With the first pick.
If there's one thing that we could all agree on, it's that the NFL draft is more like a NFL lottery.
Kyler Murray, Jameis Winston, Cam Newton, Joe Burrow, Andrew Luck.
A number one overall pick could either be a transcendent talent or he could be a colossal bust. Money could go down the drain due to little NFL production, which would equal a bona fide NFL bust. However, there are some NFL players who are able to salvage their careers after once being coined a bust. Like this player who graced magazine covers as the biggest, baddest college football player, battled drug addiction, and was considered not worthy of wearing an NFL jersey, but cleaned his act up to a respectable finish as a NFL big man. Then there is another player who literally was near death in a hospital bed and went on to return to the field 693 days later. Or an heir to an NFL legend who was considered a bust until he became a veteran leader on and off of the field for Super Bowl teams. So sit back, sack that like button for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe and turn on our notifications, fasten your seatbelts because these are NFL players who were draft busts who have revived their careers. Break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. Tony Mandarich stands at 6'6" tall and has a gigantic bust tattoo on his imposing body. Okay, not really. It's just one of the many ink marks on his former NFL offensive lineman frame. Mandarich was an outstanding offensive tackle for Michigan State, and before he was drafted was on the cover of Sports Illustrated with this dope headline calling him the Incredible Bulk. That's probably one of the craziest nicknames we've seen in a while. How could you not draft a man that's called the Incredible Bulk? That sports publication also titled him the best offensive line prospect ever. However, no one could have expected this happening. Within 3 years after he was taken second overall in the 1989 NFL draft to the Green Bay Packers, Mandarich was featured on the magazine cover again, but this time the headline read, "The Incredible Bust." And the reason why is very simple. Look at the players that were drafted right before him and right after him. These are some Hall of Fame studs. You have Troy Aikman at the number one overall pick, then you got Tony Mandarich, then you have Barry Sanders, Derek Thomas, and to top it all off, Mr. Primetime Deion Sanders himself at number 5. Mandarich ended up being the only non-Hall of Famer out of those top 5. So what the heck happened? Mandarich's troubles started early. He was a holdout for training camp until he received a 4-year, $4.4 million contract. But bro, he did not deserve any of the money as he didn't start one single game his entire rookie season. Actually, the main reason he was drafted was shocking. His body was built with artificial, illegal help. His 6'6", 320-pound Hulk-like physique was thanks to some juice, if you catch my drift. Tony had taken them since high school and hit it all the way until the NFL draft. Before the 1988 Rose Bowl, when he would be drug tested before every game to escape getting caught, he went to the extreme. Mandarich did stop injecting juice just before the combine because it's almost impossible to hide it from the NFL, even back in 1989. But then something career-threatening and even life-threatening happened that completely changed Mandarich's life around. Tony Mandarich became addicted to painkillers. He was quoted saying that he was taking 40, 50, 60 of these every single day, and within 3 seasons, the Green Bay Packers and Mandarich parted ways. The man hit rock bottom, and the headline screamed NFL bust. You might be wondering, okay, well, if that's the way his career ended, how did he come back from a near-death experience? How did he come back from rock bottom? Well, there was redemption in his future. In 1995, he admitted himself to a rehabilitation clinic, and then in 1996, at the age of 30, he would return to the NFL. It was the first time since his high school days that he played clean. He was 100% off of any PEDs, and he would sign with the Indianapolis Colts, where he redeemed himself as a solid right tackle and right guard for 3 seasons. Although he may have been a draft bust for the Green Bay Packers and thinks he may be booed if he ever returned to Green Bay for a game, the Colts were happy to have Tony Mandarich on their offensive line, and he lived up to his nickname. the terrible. But this time, it was earned by stopping rushing defensive players and overcoming addiction. He left the NFL in 1998 after a shoulder injury would have required the use of painkillers to continue playing. Thus, he gave up the game in order to stay clean. Today, he lives in Scottsdale, Arizona, and lives a quiet life as a photographer. The next player came from NFL royalty, but was considered an NFL bust. That is until he worked his way into winning not one, but 2 Lombardi trophies with 2 different teams. And it's the man, the myth, the legend, Chris Long. Now, if you don't know who Chris Long's daddy is, you may recognize Howie Long in SportsCenter and on ESPN presentations. Howie Long is a NFL Great Hall of Famer, and in 2008, his son Chris was the 2nd overall pick of the then St. Louis Rams out of the University of Virginia. Long was pegged to be the next best pass rusher for the Rams, but only had 17.5 sacks in his first 3 seasons. He did manage 13 sacks in 2011, but then injuries would plague him, and then he had only 4 sacks in 2014 and 2015 before St. Louis released him. However, Chris Long would not end his career being released by the team that drafted him and end his career as a bust. But of course, whenever there is a former top 5 pick or a player that has tremendous upside that hits free agency, there is one man that is always going to swoop in because he just happens to have this knack of being able to get the best out of him. And that is Bill Belichick. The Patriots would sign Chris Long, and he appeared in all 16 games for them, while contributing in impactful plays and 4 sacks, including ending a Jets game-winning drive in Week 12. However, his true notoriety would be known for more than just being a pass rusher. At 32 years old, Chris Long would sign with the Philadelphia Eagles and worked for those who needed the most help. Chris Long gave up his entire NFL salary in 2017 to various charities, and he also took action. He held meetings with government officials to push for criminal justice reform, and Long said a lot of times, people say that we athletes shouldn't have a lot of off-field engagements because it'll affect how we perform on the field. I don't buy that. The things we do off of the field, that's our responsibility. At the end of the day, it's the least we can do. And we're given so much. It's what we should do. Everything I did off the field or I was a part of, that's who I am. Chris Long was one of the first white players to join the front lines of the NFL to fight for equality. Long stepped up to stand beside fellow Eagles safety Malcolm Jenkins, the player who was the second to do something after Kaepernick began to kneel for justice. Then, throughout the entire season, Long stood with his hand on Malcolm's shoulder, while Malcolm continued to kneel even when the commissioner and the president of the United States criticized players' actions. The NFL awarded Chris Long the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, the most coveted award for greatness off of the field. And the sweetest part of all, he would beat his former team, the New England Patriots, for his 2nd Super Bowl ring. Chris Long on the field erased the draft bust title, playing for 11 seasons in the NFL, winning 2 Super Bowl rings, and being a pass rushing specialist who forced 4 fumbles and helped produce key turnovers. For example, in the NFC title game of the Eagles' Super Bowl winning season with the Vikings ahead 7-0, Long got to Minnesota quarterback Case Keenum and hit his arm mid-throw, which ended up in the arms of Eagles cornerback Patrick Robinson, who returned the pick for a 50-yard touchdown return that sparked the Eagles' comeback and propelled them to the Super Bowl. He may have never made a Pro Bowl, but sometimes good guy status carries more weight. Chris Long retired in 2019 and now has a successful podcast called The Green Light, where he combines humor and his knowledge of football while at the same time addressing tough topics. But I don't think any story is more inspirational than this story that we have right here. And that is a man who was coined a draft bust and turned it all around and then literally almost lost his life fighting to return to the football field. The San Francisco 49ers had the number 1 overall pick in the 2005 NFL draft. And back then, there was only one huge question that was asked leading up to the NFL draft: Alex Smith or Aaron Rodgers? You see, now it might be a little simpler than it was back then, because back then, Alex Smith seemed to be a little bit less of a risk than Aaron Rodgers was. But man, did Alex Smith have a very rough beginning to his career. He had 11 interceptions and only 1 touchdown in his rookie season, and put up a very subpar 19-31 record as a starter in his first 6 seasons. The 2007 season, he missed after he separated his right shoulder. Then he missed the entire 2008 season after breaking a bone in the same shoulder. It was found that a wire left behind from his surgery sawed the bone in half. Everyone was calling Alex Smith a draft bust. So much so that the San Francisco 49ers wasted no time in drafting his replacement in Colin Kaepernick. Then, in 2011, Alex Smith helped lead the 49ers to a 13-3 record with 17 touchdowns. In 2012, he had a great 104.5 passer rating in 9 starts, but would lose his starting spot. First due to a concussion, and then for the rest of the season to Colin Kaepernick. Kaepernick took over as the 49ers quarterback and finished taking the 49ers all the way to the Super Bowl that season. This was all while Smith watched stoically with a clipboard in his hand. Then, Alex Smith really began to hit his stride. He would get traded to the Kansas City Chiefs and would team up with Andy Reid. And the result was him taking the Kansas City Chiefs to the playoffs 3 out of the 4 years that he was there. At 33 years old, Smith threw 26 touchdowns against just 5 interceptions, leading the league in passer rating at 104.7 and yards per attempt, 8.6. He led the Chiefs to their first playoff victory in more than 2 decades. He was also a crucial mentor to Patrick Mahomes. Yes, that guy. Draft bust status cleared. Alex Smith was then traded to Washington, who signed him to a 4-year, $98 million extension and was putting up really great numbers, with Washington leading the NFC East, and then the unimaginable happened to the 3-time Pro Bowler.
Here comes the blitz. And there goes Alex Smith down at the 40-yard line. Kareem Jackson.
He suffered a compound fracture of his right tibia and fibula, thanks to the Texans' then dominant pass rushing unit. The break wouldn't be the worst thing that would happen to Alex Smith. He would almost lose his life. The wound from his leg bones that broke through his skin became infected, worse than a little pus and goo. It was necrotizing fasciitis and sepsis, a terrible infection that could have killed him immediately. Doctors implied Smith may have had to have his leg amputated, but he fought hard. 17 surgeries later, a 9-month hospital stay, and a lot of rehab, Alex Smith was determined to return to the field. And that he did. 693 days after he left on a stretcher, he was an NFL quarterback once again. In 2020, Smith threw for 1,582 yards and 6 touchdowns in his 8 games played, and actually helped Washington get to the playoffs. But it was a playoff game he had to miss, again because of injury. Smith would still earn the NFL's 2020 Comeback Player of the Year, an award that should probably be renamed in his honor. It's up in the air if he will play in 2021, but I don't think anyone is calling Alex Smith a draft bust anymore.
And to anyone out there going through hard times, know that better days lie ahead. Embrace all that life has to offer. There are no ups without the downs. Honor every single day, and remember, just live.